Stacy, and welcome to the kitchen of my old Kentucky home. Today we're going to be cooking the classics, Kentucky classics that is. When most people think of Kentucky, often three things come to mind. 1, the Kentucky Derby. 2, fine Kentucky bourbon. And for a lot of people, Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, we're not going to make the Colonel's recipe, we're going to make my grandmother's recipe today, but I think we're going to have a lot of fun. And Jessica is going to make a classic Kentucky bourbon cocktail, the Old Fashioned, which is also Louisville's official cocktail. Let's get started. So we're not making the Colonel's recipe today, we're making my grandmother's, Fanny Pryor. This is her recipe. We'll need chicken, buttermilk, flour, Crisco, and we're gonna need a couple of tools in addition to the cast iron skillet I have on the stove. We're gonna need a wire cooling rack resting in a baking pan, long handled tongs, and a thermometer to keep an eye on the temperature of the grease that the chicken is frying in. Before we get our chicken breaded, we are going to need to heat up the grease that we're going to fry it in. So I'm starting with some shortening, or you can use lard. Some people use vegetable oil or canola oil, but you want something that gets to a high heat, so you don't want to use olive oil. And the brand that my grandmother always used, Crisco. Okay, as this Crisco melts, we're just going to drop a thermometer in and make sure that the temp comes between 350 and 375. Then once we get the chicken in, we're gonna wanna make sure it stays somewhere between 300 and 325. So while our grease is heating in the cast iron skillet, we're gonna make our breading. Now, as I said, Kentucky is famous for its fried chicken because of Colonel Sanders, of course, and his mega empire. But we are not using his secret 7 herbs and spices, or 11, or whatever it was. My grandmother just used simple salt and pepper in hers. So we're gonna add, we'll tell you how many teaspoons in the recipe on the screen. I'll just kind of do it by feel. And salt and crushed ground pepper. And this was just really all the seasoning Grandma Fanny thought she needed, and that was just fine with us. So we're just gonna mix that around. And then I've got a buttermilk wash that we're gonna dredge the chicken in. Sometimes Nanny, that's what I call her, Nanny Fanny, if she didn't have buttermilk, she would just use water also, which was just as well. So the next thing we're gonna do is take our pieces of chicken. I'm gonna start with the smaller ones. We've got a lot of drumsticks. So I'm just gonna dredge that in the buttermilk, like that. And dredge it in our flour mix. Get it real good. I'm gonna lay it on this platter till I get enough on the platter that's gonna fill the cast iron skillet, because we want them all to be cooking at about an equal amount of time. So I'm gonna finish out the chicken. All right, our drumsticks are breaded, the grease is ready, we're ready to fry some chicken. You gotta monitor this the whole time because you don't want it to drop below 300, or you're gonna have, you're not gonna have crispy fried chicken. And if it goes over 375, 400, then we're gonna burn it. So we wanna keep it right in that 300 to 325 mark for the frying. Okay, we've had this cooking for about 5 minutes. I put a lid on, called my mom to make sure I needed to do that. She said that was a good idea, especially on your first batch. And so I'm just gonna check the bottom of this one. And I think this is a perfectly golden brown color that we're looking for. You can make it a little deeper if you like it. These drumsticks have been on about 5 minutes, I guess. And again, it's all about the look and feel more than the time. All right, we're gonna put this lid back on again. Like I said, my mom suggested that this helps heat up, especially that first batch. All right, I'm gonna cook up this next batch of chicken, and you're gonna go watch Jessica make an old fashioned.
Since Stacy's making such an iconic Kentucky dish, I wanted to make an equally as iconic cocktail. So we're making Louisville's official cocktail, the Old Fashioned. It was declared our official cocktail by our mayor in 2015 because it was actually invented right here in Louisville, Kentucky at a downtown club that was founded in the 1800s that still exists today. It's a really simple cocktail. We're using Jim Beam Signature Craft, old-fashioned bitters, cherries, orange, and a little bit of sugar. So what we're gonna do first is muddle our fruit, sugar, and bitters together. Got an orange slice here. We're just gonna drop that in the bottom. I'm gonna sprinkle in a little bit of sugar, and this is really your preference for how sweet you like your cocktails, or if you just want it more spirit forward. And then I've got a couple of dashes of bitters right in there. And add a little bit of water. This is just gonna dilute it, bring the flavor of the bourbon out even more. And so I think the secret here to a really good old fashioned is to give this orange a good solid muddling. So get really hard into the bottom of the glass. You want to get the peel so that the citrus oils come out, and then get the pulp of the fruit. And try to get the sugar a little dissolved in here and mixed really well with the bitters. So cocktails kind of came about before Prohibition. Your spirits might not necessarily have been consistent in quality or particularly good, so they started adding a little sugar, bitters, and fruit. But this version, the delicious bourbon old fashioned that we all know and love, was made famous here in Louisville at the Pendennis Club. So that's our great tie-in. All right, that looks sufficiently muddled. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw in one of my big ice cubes here to keep the cocktail from diluting too much more quickly. And I'm gonna pour in just about 2 ounces of bourbon. Give it a little bit of a stir, and then we're just going to garnish with our cherry. Some people muddle it in, but I like it just kind of as a garnish, and then eat that bourbon-soaked cherry out in the end. I'm using Luxardo because I'm feeling fancy, but you could use something just as long as it's a little bit of an upgrade from a maraschino cherry. But that's all there is to it, a classic Louisville original old-fashioned cocktail. Well, Stacy, I am very excited to sit down and try your grandma's fried chicken recipe.
Well, I'm so excited to share it with you, Jessica. I tell you, it really takes me back. Not that we don't have this. My mom makes it pretty frequently, but I will admit I went through a stage of not fixing it for a while, even though I'd grown up with it. You know, you try to be health conscious, right? But now that my kids are getting older, I really want to make sure that they are growing up with the same Kentucky culinary traditions that I did, and not only that they experience it, but they know how to make it too. Because when I grew up, this was something we had almost every Sunday night. My grandmother would fix these huge spreads that looked like Thanksgiving dinner, so I'm glad to be able to share it with you.
Good.
And this old fashioned, no question why it was named Louisville's official cocktail, and you just nail it every time.
This is definitely at least a weekly tradition at my house.
Well, both of these Kentucky classics we are glad to share with you, and hope that you will make them in your neck of the woods. And come back and visit us at culinarylouisville.com.
And we'll see you next time on Bourbon
And Biscuits.
Cheers.